because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, I've been really thinking about how I could do something about mental health and, my own experiences and with mental health issues. And so what I thought I would do is talk about works of whether literature, film, TV, video games, that I personally connected to, and I felt provided a look into my experience with depression, anxiety, trauma, and so on. And the reason I say I really want to kind of stress that these are works that I thought captured my experience. And one of the challenges I find when it comes to talking about things like mental health as it's explored in different works of art is that there's no one experience. So, what one person's experience with depression is very different than someone else's. And so, for every work that explores depression in a way that feels authentic and feels, like relatable to somebody with depression, there are probably 100 people who feel like it's not relatable, or it's exploitative, or it's over the top, or it's like written by somebody who doesn't get it. And I think that that's one of the challenges. And I always sort of struggle with talking about how mental health is kind of addressed in different works, because I feel like because of that sort of unique experience that we all have, or that, anybody who's dealing with depression, anxiety, any other form of mental illness. And so I just want to kind of set that tone that these works that I'm going to talk about are, for me, very authentic explorations and sort of like presentations of certain mental health issues that I personally have. So I can't speak for whether there may be works of art that are really great representations of, bipolar disorder or of schizophrenia, but I don't have those, or even addiction, and that I don't feel that I can speak honestly or authentically to. And again, these I find relatable and I find realistic portrayals of depression or suicidal thinking or anxiety, but again, they may not for somebody else. And I also want to say that, this is, a trigger warning here, because some people like to delve into works that they feel represent their emotional sort of challenges, and other people do not want to kind of touch on it. Other people find it off-putting, or, they really kind of want to escape from it, and the last thing they want to do is see themselves reflected, or at least in these ways. So I'm just putting that all out there so that, no one says like, oh, I hated this, and how can you possibly say this is authentic? I thought it was ridiculous. Again, this is my experience, and this is what I connect to, and yeah. So with that being said, I'm going to talk about some books, some movies, a TV show, a video game, and a play, and one short story, which I guess is a book. Okay, so I am going to get this out there right now because I have talked about this book pretty much constantly. I talk about it in almost every video, I feel like. So before I, go too deep into this one, I'm just going to talk about I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I thought this was one of the best, if not the best, book that I've read that captures depression, feelings of suicide, feelings of loneliness, social anxiety. I mean, there's just so much in here that I related to and I connected to the point where when I finished it, I was just kind of in awe and just processing it, and it stuck with me in a way that I don't think too much has. And I know I talk about it a lot, but I just cannot get over how impactful this novel was, and just how authentic I found it. So, again, I'm not going to go into a lot more detail because I know I talk about it a lot, but I'm thinking of ending things. Definitely needs to be on this list. And another one that I talk about a lot is The Last House on Needless Street. This is more dealing with trauma and PTSD. And I mean, I think, anybody who's read this knows that it's a little more involved than I think in my experience. But I did think that the way it's written, I feel like if this was written by somebody else, it might come across as, and I don't want to say like, sometimes I feel like people are like, ooh, let's write a book about trauma, because it's in the news and it's something people are talking about. And, I'm not always sure that like they have kind of that personal connection. And again, I don't know if Catriona Ward has that personal connection, but I did find that even if she didn't, it was written in a very empathetic way. And I found she was very like, it was very subtle, but also like tastefully handled. And like I said, it's authentic. And so I know I've talked about this book a lot as well. So I'm going to move on to things I haven't talked about as much. And the first one is going to be a movie, and kind of keeping in line with the two books that are technically horror, but obviously have sort of deeper meaning and deeper context. I'm going to talk about the Babadook. And this is, I think with the Babadook, this is one of the, I feel like, movies that kind of led to what's like sort of our modern horror, which is horror that, is allegorical. I mean, and again, it's not like this has never been done before, but I do feel like there's a trend kind of now in horror, and there has been for about, 10 years now. Horror that is, like I said, allegorical, horror is metaphor, where the monster is really something that, or the the creepy element is something that's either internal or deals with, it maybe is like a physical manifestation or representation of something else. And so the Babadook, I think really captures grief and depression so effectively. And, I felt after this movie is like, yes, it's creepy and there's like plenty of scary parts, but, when I got more out of this movie was just such an authentic representation of grief and depression. And so that's what I liked about this one. And then in another horror movie, this is We're All Going to the World's Fair. And one of the things with this movie that actually I kind of struggled with, because I was very, very excited to see this movie. And then I watched it, and at the end of it, I was like, I didn't like that. But the more I thought about it, I did like it. It's very well made. There's a lot about it I do like. I think it was just marketed in a way that didn't really, I thought it was going to be a horror movie. This is very much not a horror movie. I mean, it's a horror movie like The Babadook, where there's horror elements, and it's certainly some creepy scenes and creepiness, but really this is another sort of allegorical, metaphorical sort of horror for loneliness, depression, social anxiety, our lack of connection with others. But again, I really connected to this and to the characters in this very deeply. It's just, when I was watching it, I was just waiting for it to get scary. And it's scary, or it's more like unnerving, but in a very different way. And so I think if you go into seeing this, like, definitely put aside any assumptions, any of the like marketing, how it kind of portrays it as sort of like a found footage horror movie, and just kind of enjoy it for what it is. And it's unique. It's definitely unique as a as a story. And so I think it needs to be seen, and it's a great film. I just think it was kind of like hurt by, I think people are going to be disappointed if they go into it thinking it's going to be one thing and it's not. Okay, so the Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman is a short story, and I feel like everyone may have read it in school. I know I read it in school, but I feel like this is one of those works that captured mental illness, anxiety, and also there's very strong social commentary, feminism, and how women were kind of treated, and how women's emotions, especially at like the turn of the century, were very much like, oh, you're dealing with depression or you're having anxiety, and in this case, I think it was postpartum depression. You must be hysterical and you should be locked up, and so there's a lot of that going on here. But I think like the obsessive thinking, this is something that really stood out to me, even, and I was not going through postpartum depression as a teenager, but, even as a teenager, I was like, oh, wow, I totally get like how like this obsessive kind of thinking and, the anxious thought process, and feeling sort of trapped. And I mean, in this case, like she is technically trapped. But, especially there's this like kind of idea like, oh, well, just distract yourself from your depression and your thoughts. And like the worst thing in the world someone can tell you is don't think about it, because I mean, obviously like that's just going to make you think about it more. And so that I feel like this story kind of shows what happens when left to your own devices and like trapped in your own mind. If you struggle with like some of this kind of scattered thinking. And so it can be very frustrating of a read if you have, experienced this, but I thought it did a really good job of showing it. Okay, and next up, Dear Evan Hansen. And I know there's a lot in this play that, people tend to kind of, there's a lot of conversation about Evan Hansen's actions and what's okay and what's not okay. And I mean, there's definitely multiple themes in this play, but one of the things I kind of what I relate to, and one of the things I really liked about it is how I thought it captured, again, social anxiety, depression. I do wish there was a little bit more, I know, like, they don't really explore kind of suicide, except for, in how people respond and react to suicide. And obviously there's some issues here, but I really kind of, even though like some of his actions are, definitely flawed, I can really empathize with his actions. And I think, the music is really beautiful. Waving Through a Window, I think just so captures that feeling of, kind of trying to connect to people, and then, just kind of getting frustrated because you realize like you just can't connect no matter what you do. And it's like, I don't know, is something wrong with me, or like, why can't I connect to other people? And so, I mean, I love that song. I listen to it a lot, and, yeah, it's sad, but I do think, the lyrics and, the story is, I feel very authentic, and, I can definitely, like I said, I can empathize with Evan Hansen's actions, even if they're questionable. Okay, and then the book Someday This Pain Will Be Useful to You by Peter Cameron. Apparently, this may or may not have been made into a movie. There's a movie with the same name, and I didn't know there was. Haven't seen it. I don't think I have any interest in seeing it because I like the book, and I like how it's, it is internalized, so I don't like those usually getting translated into a movie. This is kind of, I mean, I could have put Catcher in the Rye on here, but I feel like it's like we've kind of been there, done that. Everybody knows, like you either like Catcher in the Rye or you don't. This is sort of a similar type of thing where I feel like, you could find the main character of this novel like irritating or whiny or difficult, or, kind of like, oh, you're bringing all these problems onto yourself. But I thought he was, very realistic, and I thought, I kind of could relate to a lot of his thinking and his actions. And so another kind of story that's coming of age, but dealing with depression and anxiety. And then for a movie, I'm going to talk about It's a Wonderful Life, because this is, I feel like, kind of a misclassified movie. Everyone's always like, oh, what a great holiday movie, a family movie, it's a Christmas story. And every time I watch it, I love this movie and I think it's beautiful and it's very well made. I have no problems with the movie, but I'm just kind of like, how is this a holiday movie? It's so sad. Really, it's just a story about a guy who wants to kill himself and then realizing his life matters. And while that's kind of a happy ending, it's the last thing I want to think about on the holidays. And I guess, because of the fact that the holidays can be kind of a depressing time, especially if you're kind of alone, I think that maybe that's why people like watching it. But I feel like it's the last thing I want to think about on the holidays is, thinking about suicide and, feeling depressed and feeling like, your life doesn't make a difference. And it's a happy movie. The ending to me is the least, I won't say authentic, but it's the least real part of the movie to me. The movie, what I love about it is how well it explores the small actions that we take and how our lives, even when we think they don't matter, even if we haven't done anything big or important, kind of the ripple effect we have on other people. So it's a great movie. I just think it's, definitely misclassified. And then I'm going to go into a controversial one. The book 13 Reasons Why. And, I really loved the first season of this series. I didn't continue because I didn't think it needed to be continued. I read the book. I thought it wrapped up. I was really only interested in Hannah's story. I didn't care about the rest of it. But this is a controversial one because a lot of people felt that the show kind of glamorized suicide. That the book maybe glamorized it, turned suicide into an act of revenge. And I can see that argument. I really can. But the thing is, for me, this book and this movie, this show, I felt did the opposite. To me, this is kind of the It's a Wonderful Life sort of ending that I wanted. I know it doesn't end well. But I thought, especially the show, I thought it did such a great job of showing how painful the aftermath of Hannah's suicide was on people. Not the people getting the tapes necessarily, but watching her parents and, some of her loved ones and some of her friends and, realizing how they, how hurt they were and how they could have wished they could have done something. I think to me that was more of a deterrent than glamorizing it. And obviously everybody has different reactions, and I'm not saying someone's wrong. But I loved this book. I loved the show. I thought they did a great job of helping understand how kind of the opposite of It's a Wonderful Life, where the small things in your life maybe have a positive impact on other people, but small actions can also slowly break a person down. And so, I think for a lot of people, they read it and they say, none of these reasons seem like a reason to kill yourself. And that's true. Minus, sexual assault. I think that's, and not that we should kill ourselves over sexual assault, but obviously that's a pretty traumatic experience, but there's a lot of little things. And it's those slow, it's the slow buildup, even without the sexual assault. Obviously that makes sense as that kind of what really, really pushes this forward. But a lot of things, that people think don't matter, oh, her poems were read, or one of her friends was mean to her. And it doesn't seem like it matters, but it does, because we don't know what someone's going through. And, sometimes you do something callous, or, even it's oh, I'm too busy to talk to this person, or, you say something kind of careless, and you don't think about the long-term consequences of like what that comment could do to a person. Um, so I really love this, and um, I thought it was very like eye opening. I mean, I related to it, I connected to it, but I also think it does kind of open those conversations about like how our actions impact other people. Um, but again, I understand, the controversy too. And then I'm going to talk about Euphoria, in particular, the episode that's called The Trials and Tribulations of Trying to Pee While Depressed. I don't think I've seen something this well written in like TV in terms of showing depression. I mean, I know like obviously this is connected to Rue's addiction as well, but I mean, like just her like watching like endless hours of Love Island and not wanting to get out of bed and just like struggling even to go to the bathroom, and like how just going to the bathroom just feels like this huge effort. And it's like, well, if I go to the bathroom, I'm gonna have to get up and pee again later, and like why even bother? I'm just gonna have to keep doing it. And like when you're in like that worst, those like rock bottom kind of feelings from depression, um, I thought this did such a great job of showing it, and the frustration for like everyone else, because like her mom's trying to help her sister's trying to help, like her friends are trying to help, and like nothing helps. And I mean, she doesn't want to be in this like situation. She wants to obviously have the energy to get up and pee and, like stop watching Love Island. And at one point she's even like, she can't even like focus on Love Island. And I've been there, and I just, thought it just did such a great job of showing like that experience. And, there's no easy answers and there's no solution, but I thought it did a great job of authentically capturing that feeling. Because, sometimes people go, oh, like you're just sad, snap out of it. And the intensity of like these moments are, I think, hard to really kind of explain to someone, and I thought it did a great job of kind of putting somebody in their shoes. So for video game, I have Life is Strange. There's a lot of there's a lot of themes in this game that are great, but in particular the Kate story. And one of the things about it is it's really interesting because again, it's kind of like 13 Reasons Why, where throughout the game leading up into the second episode, there's all these like small things happening, and you may just be like playing the game and not like exploring every little thing, or you're kind of, you have choices, and so you may like say something and not be thinking about like what you said. And there's one point where you have a call comes through, and do you pick up or do you not pick up? And it all leads to, I mean, and again, it's choice based, but like some of the events are going to happen no matter what. But there's a really intense moment where Kate is considering killing herself, and you can save her or she can die, and it's so intense. But what I thought was really interesting is, for a video game, I mean, obviously it's a video game. You can like save and, or go back and replay it, which you can't do in real life. But I thought like the intensity, kind of helps think about like, oh, wow, like in real life, I can't go back, and so kind of like those decisions you make, and, those small actions you might take, or how you say certain things. And, I thought like it just did a really great job. I mean, again, very dark. And I had a friend who was like she just like could not play it because she was so upset, that her actions, she ended up like Kate died, and she was just like so devastated about it. I mean, I'm not suggesting, put yourself through that, but I just thought it did a really good job of kind of doing it in a way where it was like you understood like the consequences, and how actions like lead to certain choices and certain events. And then finally, for a movie, this just came out last year, and the movie is Aftersun. And this is a stunning film about depression, about loss, about grief. It's about a father and daughter, and they're on a vacation together, and it's so beautiful. It's very slow. It's a very slow pace, slow burn kind of movie that, you know, as it's kind of unraveling, you're just like, okay, there's just like this dad and his kid, and this seems kind of boring. And, so they're on vacation and they don't have a lot of money, and this doesn't seem that interesting. And, he's a single dad, and I think she's like 14, 13. But it, it's one of those movies that at the end, it just like kicks your ass. And, um, again, very, very dark. It deals with depression. It deals with suicide. So all of these, come with a massive trigger warning. But I really wanted to just talk about, I thought, works of art that I thought were authentic, and captured the feeling of depression and suicidal thinking and anxiety, and, different things that I've personally experienced. And so again, this is another one that I would, another trigger warning, or if you're not in the place where you want to watch something really sad, definitely not for you. But beautiful film, absolutely stunning. And I highly recommend it if you're in a place where you can handle it. So again, those were just some works that I thought did a good job of exploring mental health. You know, Again, like, I know some people don't even want to like touch, um, you know, that kind of content. They want to escape, or they want to watch movies or read books and just kind of like escape into like a happy place. And that's totally fine. I mean, that's just not me. I'm always looking for like that kind of connection that I'm like, wow, like somebody sees the world in a way that I do too. And like, it gives you that feeling of not being alone. But I mean, I totally get like people not wanting that, not wanting to deal with it. So, but hopefully maybe these would be something interesting, and, maybe you completely disagree. And so that's totally fine. I mean, again, I feel like everyone's like mental health is subjective, and, everyone's experience is unique, and I can't say like what my experience that is like anybody else's. I'm just saying for me, I thought these were great representations. So, yeah, and again, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and, also if you are struggling, there are resources out there, and I'll probably put some up just because I think it's important, it's fine to explore these things, but like hopefully you're in a place where you can. And all right, so take care of yourselves. Bye.